Let's raise some big questions and widen this. Is Mr. Trudeau spoiling for a fight day by day? Is politics now above ties with India for Trudeau? Is it all about politics? How should India now respond? And how does one restore India-Canada ties? I'm joined by Kanwal Sibal, former Foreign Secretary. Shashikant is former DGP Punjab. He'll give us the Lawrence Bishnoi angle. And Ward Elcock is former Director, Canadian Security Intelligence Service. I want to come to you, Mr. Elcock, first, because the charges that are being made by Mr. Trudeau, he says he had intel initially, but he doesn't put the hard evidence on the table, and then uses the word Lawrence Bishnoi and says gangsters are being provided information and they're the ones responsible for these assassinations. These are all serious charges in the public domain, can't be made on just intel. Is Mr. Trudeau overplayed his hand, sir?
No, not in the least. And it's not based on intelligence at this point. The reality is at this point, there are 20 or 30 charges outstanding as a result of the RCMP investigations into these issues. This is not any longer about intelligence. This is about evidence that will be presented in court and probably in the not too distant future. Exactly when will depend on how fast the Crown can proceed, how fast it wants to proceed. This is going to be a complex case, so it may not proceed very quickly. But over the next while, we will see. We are likely to see evidence, and since somebody of a large group like 20 or 30 people is bound to flip, we're probably going to see quite a lot of evidence about
the nature
what
of it.
occurred.
Any sense of the nature of this evidence? That is this evidence that is enough for Trudeau to make the kind of statements he makes, even suggesting that the Indian High Commissioner becomes a person of interest?
No, the reason for the High Commissioner to be declared a person of interest was because of the RCMP investigation identifying him as a person of interest in their investigation. Nothing to do with Mr. Trudeau.
Interesting. Kanwal Sibal, you're listening to a former Canadian top security intelligence service official saying they have hard evidence. Now, we don't know the nature of it. It'll come out in a court investigation. Just as the Canadians and Trudeau have messed up, have we also messed up this situation? Is it time for us also to introspect? We can't have Lawrence Bishnoi being used to settle our, to target some khalistani. That's not what foreign policy surely is about. Do we have to also introspect who allowed Lawrence Bishnoi to become a freelance agent?
But who is giving proof of this? This is just what the Canadians are saying, and why should we take them at their word?
No, I'm just telling you, a Canadian Security Intelligence Service head says all of this is going to come out in court. So are we going to end up embarrassing ourselves by saying, where is the evidence?
Let it come out. And the gentleman who was the earlier head of the CSIS, he has to defend his country's position and his organization. That doesn't surprise me. But a lot of nonsense has been saying on the Canadian side, and also by Mr. Dosanjh, unfortunately, whatever his name is. Because if Modi has this muscular policy, how is it that he's not used this against the United States? He's not used this against Britain. He's not used this in other countries where Khalistani supporters are active. In fact, relations with the United States, despite the incident of Panoon, are progressing very well. With the UK, things are settling down. They're cooperating with us much more. Canada is a very special case because of the immaturity of his leader. He's gone and destroyed a relationship which in the past has been very good, was on the mend under Stephen Harper. We were doing very well. We signed the nuclear agreement. We started buying uranium from Canada. We started negotiating the FTA. But he has ruined everything because of his politics.
So I take your point. I take your point about his immaturity, his politics. But sir, just to answer, as you mentioned US, you mentioned UK, all of them publicly are backing Canada. Does that not become embarrassing? How long are we going to live in denial?
It is not embarrassing one bit. It is because the Five Eyes there to support him, because he's going around telephoning everybody, begging everybody to support him. The British initially made quite a muted statement. But clearly, Mr. Trudeau went to the Starmer and said, look, you have to support me more openly. And the second statement they have done. But look at the British record. Have they extradited anybody from Britain? How many extradition requests have we made? What about their judicial system? We made 26 extraditions requests to Canada. Have they Have they extradited anybody? Now they talk about India cooperating. Trudeau says India must cooperate with Canada. But has Canada cooperated with us?
Very good
All
point.
this while that
Very good point, Mr. Sibal, let me take that to Mr. Alcock. Mr. Sibal here says, we've made several extradition requests to Canada, Khalistani terrorists. Now we are being told by sources even about the Lawrence Bishnoi gang. Canada doesn't respond to India's concerns. India's territorial integrity is our concern just as it is yours.
I'm sure that the Canadian government supports India's integrity. Having said that,
So with due regard, sir, why are those who we ask for extradition not being extradited?
The Canadian government has actually been quite clear on that subject. It has said on a number of occasions that the requests for extradition that the Indian government has sent to the government of Canada have been deficient. It is not simply enough to say that there are people who support Khalistan separatism for Canada to take action on extraditing somebody to India. It's perfectly legal for somebody to talk about Quebec separatism in Canada. It's also perfectly legal for somebody in Canada to talk about Khalistan independence. Those are not issues on which people will be extradited to any other country or prosecuted for terrorism. So if the Indian government actually wants to produce evidence that somebody is engaged in terror, then they should do that. But so far as I understand it, from all of the statements that have been made by the government, the Indian government has so far failed to do that.
I want to bring in at this moment Shashikant, former DGP Punjab, because you've tracked the career of Lawrence Bishnoi. He's become the X factor in all of this. Do you believe Justin Trudeau when he says the Lawrence Bishnoi gang is being used to carry out extrajudicial killings in Canada? Can he be that powerful?
Look, I'm surprised. In fact, I'm amused at whatever points are being made. They say that Niger was killed by somebody. But here, the other day it was happening in Bombay. A political leader was killed. This gang said, yes, they had killed it. Musewala, wherever they do it, they take the responsibility. Has anybody taken responsibility? Or they're just moving in that circle of intelligence. Intelligence and hard facts are different. I have been intelligence myself. Intelligence and hard facts are repeat, whether it's I-5, I-7, whatever it is. And again, I'll come back to the report of the Canadian parliamentarians. It was in 2018, where they said that China and Pakistan, they are all meddling in their affairs. Have they raised this point? Why are they only talking about India, what India has done? If Indian gangsters are there, they're doing something, they take the responsibility. Who's killed? Has anybody taken responsibility? Just living in the area that, hey, intelligence, that doesn't mean. I know that the Canadian Prime Minister is fighting for his own survival. He's heading a minority government. Any day it can fall. Next year they have the elections.
So you're saying this intel is not strong enough, but Kamal Sibal, a final word from you. All of this, and I come back to it, do we also need to look inwards? I repeat this once again to you. Surely someone, I spoke to, I can tell you, a former foreign secretary, another former secretary, and he told me, I can't come on your channel, but we have messed up. And we need to acknowledge that, if not publicly, then privately.
I don't know what he meant by we having messed up, because there is nothing that we have done. Look, the fact...
We've got cases in America and Canada where both these countries are accusing Indian citizens. Does that not trouble you?
No, it doesn't trouble me. Does it trouble the Americans that they have killed, high officials, state officials of other countries on foreign soil? Does it trouble the Canadians that their forces have committed atrocities and human rights violations in Afghanistan? They have been in every NATO operation everywhere, and they have done it. Are they troubled by that? What happens to their moral stature and their moral pretensions? And India is being accused. Look, the High Commissioner is being made a person of interest. Is complete nonsense. It is unbelievable that they think that the High Commissioner of India or the Indian ambassadors are involved in murder schemes. This is just sheer propaganda. If they wanted to declare him persona non grata, they should have just done.
Mr. Warlock, is this propaganda? End of the day, is this also part propaganda? When you come in the public domain as the Prime Minister of the country, you're expected to make your comments, Mr. Alcock, with complete confidence based on fact, not on conjecture. The court hearing will prove that. Has Canada overplayed its hand one final time?
You're all emphasizing Mr. Trudeau. The reality is this began, at least the most recent episode, began with the RCMP making statements. It is the RCMP that have collected evidence and have laid criminal charges with the support of the Crown Prosecutor. So there are charges that are pending. Those trials will go ahead. Evidence will be produced, but for it to be produced before the trial is nonsensical and will not happen.
Okay.
I doubt very much that it happens in India. If it does, that's a strange way to conduct a trial. But it will not happen in Canada until the trial takes place. When that trial takes place, the evidence will be presented to the court where it should be presented. And what that evidence will be interesting. But I suspect it's likely that with a large number of people, and there are something like 20 or 30 people charged,
right,
somebody will roll over. So there will also be people who are willing to testify to their contacts, as well as whatever information the RCMP have.
Let me leave it there. It's interesting how this is going to play out in the weeks and months ahead. This is not over. This is something that requires diplomatic savviness now. Two countries who are supposed to be friendly with each other, engaging in this kind of face-to-face attack day by day is extremely unfortunate.